Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Audio Asylum, where an arrangement of us geeky people get together to discuss wonderful things. This week, very specifically, the one wonderful thing of Wonder Woman in celebration of her new movie coming out, starring the illustrious Gal Gadot. I never knew how to say that. However you pronounce her awesome name. In celebration of that, as everybody's introducing themselves, I have one question for them. I, for starters, am Joseph, and that question is, what Wonder Woman equipment would you choose if you could only have one? So, as an example, like I said, hi, I'm Joseph, and I think the lasso of truth would just be so, so good. I'm just saying, the uses are beyond extraordinary. So that's me. Next up, DJ. Please introduce yourself.
What up? I'd probably go with I'd go with the wrist gauntlets
I think,
because
yeah,
they're like unbreakable, and I just get to wear them on my wrist. It's like a giant watch on both hands, except they don't tell time.
I think it'd be a very nice fashion statement. Yeah. Yep. Next up, though, we have our man James ringing in.
Hey, what's up?
Yo, what kind of equipment would you take?
So I was gonna choose Lasso of Truth, but honestly, I think that I would go with Invisible Jet, just because really, I mean, the Lasso of Truth is gonna be like cool around everyone around you, but like it's my own private jet. Plus, it's invisible. There's I
Yeah,
don't know.
right? No,
There's really nothing else like it.
the benefits are there. Just make sure you're keeping up with other people's traffic patterns, right? Awesome, awesome. Well, next we have the ever so present and good Ryan.
Yeah, as far as the equipment question, I'm gonna go with the tunic. It'd be really tight around the waist and
Yeah.
spacious at the chest, but quite fashionable.
Yeah, no,
No,
I like it.
seriously though, I'm gonna go with a off pick and go with the shield. Given what we've seen, it can do destructively and defensively. I like the shield.
Nice, nice. We're being extremely unique here. I appreciate that. And to round us off, who will probably say something just despite the statement I just said, Kiefer coming in hot.
Coming in hot on my invisible jet, just like
That's
James.
right. Yeah, what did I say?
Obviously, the invisible jet is the most awesome piece of the Wonder Woman mythology because you can fly through the air with the greatest of ease. No one can see you. No one knows what you're about, and you are rich enough to own a private jet that you can park in your driveway if you have one that's big enough. So, definitely jet.
We can have invisible jet races.
Yeah, that'd be
And
fun.
how would you determine the winner?
I wouldn't determine the winner. I would just wait until an explosion happened.
Yeah, the finish line is a brick wall. That's how you.
This is how terrorism happens, people.
What, two invisible jets on a brick wall?
Oh boy.
I will say I appreciate the idea
You're
of the
welcome.
tunic, and I think it's got me thinking. We all need to get that dress that's in the Wonder Woman film and just tailor that to our own uses.
Yeah, we
I
can all
think we'd
hide
look
swords
lovely.
in it.
Yeah, swords in the back of our dress. Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
It's my favorite kind of dress.
Sword dresses. Oh man, but speaking of the movie, before we get started, because we're all going to share our thoughts because we've like all seen it and it's awesome. Well, that's my thought, but I'll get more on that later. I did want to throw out some numbers for us to know going in. So like Wonder Woman started off this opening weekend. It is estimated to hit over 100,000 in the domestic total. Like it looks like 100,000. Like wow, my brain's numbers are not computing. That's 100,500.
Oh
No,
boy.
I mean 100.
Joseph stroking, everybody.
My brain. 100 million. 100,500,000.
Oh my
Oh
god.
man.
If
No,
movies were made in the 1700s.
yeah, right?
Huge total.
Oh man, 100,500,000 is the estimated right now. As the day is wrapping up right now. I'm gonna say right now again, just because apparently I like those words. Now comparatively, that is around the same, just under the other DC movies. We got like Batman v Superman was at 166 million, Oscar award-winning Suicide Squad at 133 million, and Man of Steel at 116. So it's comparative, not a little smaller, but it also looks like it opened up to slightly less theaters. So there's that, and we actually might get more or a little less than the estimate. Still an estimate. Worldwide, it's about twice that, so that's all cool. But the biggest thing we need to remember is that the total domestic gross of Superman Returns was 200 million. So as long as we beat that, we're fine. Am I right? Like,
Poor Superman Returns.
we all don't love you, Superman Returns. I'm sorry.
Superman Returns can return to the shelf and stay there.
It was never on my shelf. I'm sorry.
It is on Netflix, though, where you can still find it today.
That
Really?
is true. It's very true. And just finishing stats is like it's the largest opening for a female-directed feature, which is pretty awesome. Killing it out there. You get 'em, Patty and Gal and Chris, even though you're not a female.
Fun fact, it's the last female-directed superhero movie since Punisher Warzone,
That's quite a while.
the illustrious Punisher Warzone,
The illustrious.
starring Ray Stevenson.
That's right. That's right. And the previous record holder was 50 Shades of Grey, so I have no problem with this beating that out. It makes me have a little more faith in society.
It
Just saying.
gives that record a little bit more credibility.
Yeah, right?
Which also involved a lasso.
Oh,
Oh man.
you had to take it there. Oh,
And there were probably some gauntlets.
there were most definitely gauntlets. Oh, man.
And a private jet.
And a lot of
And
wondering.
potentially swords.
Come to think of it, this is looking mighty similar.
Oh, man. Oh,
Maybe
man.
others.
Well, before we derail ourselves any further, I would like us to go ahead and start talking about the movie itself. Now, non-spoilers. We are not going to do spoilers until the very end, so you don't even have to worry about that. We'll give you warning and all that. We are primarily going to be a non-spoiler podcast for you, the people. So, who would like to open us up on their non-spoiler thoughts on this pretty cool movie?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get this out of the way so I can't prematurely disagree. I'm just gonna say that I really loved Wonder Woman. I think it was a great movie. It was a step in the right direction away from Suicide Squad. I think it did a lot to balance out what the DCEU's been trying to do, which is, in addition to being a good comic book film, but having a bit to say about our world. And I think that it tried to do that in such a way that it wasn't as hard to swallow as many people found Man of Steel and BVS to be. And I think it succeeded. Largely, I would say it was a positive film experience for me. I really enjoyed it. The humor was great. It didn't sacrifice the tone of the film or an emotional moment or impact by shoehorning humor where it doesn't belong. And I feel like the action was tight. CGI was iffy in places, but overall, very well done. Very enjoyable film experience. And I would probably, out of 10, give it a high 8 or 9.
Nice. Thank you, Robo Ryan. Your little clippy there. But that's really cool. Good starting analysis. Who else we got?
So I liked it a lot. This is James, by the way. I've actually seen it 3 times now.
Nice.
That's more
The-
than me.
If I like anytime if there's a movie that I see that I like and I know someone hasn't seen it, I'm like, oh well, I might as well. But to me, it's about as close to Marvel's formula as I hope we get, because I think it's a push in the right direction to balancing the tone between, the darkness that's been in some of Snyder's movies and the optimism that people want. So I definitely walked away happy because I'm happy with the movie. It seems like a lot of people that haven't been happy with the DCEU are happy with the movie, and I hope that we can kind of maintain this trajectory. I think out of 10, I'd give it less. I'd probably give it a 7.5 out of 10, but I still like that's still a good review to me. I think it it's in the upper half of the superhero movies as of late.
Yeah, let me get in on this. I'm
Gonna
Kiefer, by
hop
the way.
right in.
And first of all, I want to say that I was really lucky to get a ticket to the early screening of Wonder Woman like the Wednesday of the week before it came out. And I saw it with a bunch of other fans. I'd never been to a fan screening like that before. And I'm going to be very optimistic about the film and say I was thoroughly impressed. For what it was, I think it hit almost every single note perfectly. I think the performances were great. Gal Gadot was it's impossible to say too much in praise of her performance. And I think just down the line, whether you're talking about Chris Pine or Robin Wright or Connie Nielsen, they're just all great. And I'm going to say this too, just in slight disagreement with James. I don't feel like the formula that they followed necessarily is the Marvel formula, because I think that formula has existed a long time before Marvel started making movies in the last 10 to 15 years. I think it's much more similar to the first Superman movie that Patty Jenkins has already said was a major, major influence on her own directing style and intentions for the Wonder Woman movie. So out of 10, I think for what it was, it's almost perfect. So I'll probably give it somewhere from an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. So I was thoroughly impressed. For the DCEU, I think this was actually a little bit less necessary than, which major critics would assert that it doesn't save the DCEU because the DCEU doesn't need saving. But for people who care about things like critical reception, and even for progress in general, the first female film, I think it's important. It's great, and go see it. See it 2 times, see it 3 times. I've only seen it twice, so James has me beat. But go out and support this film and tell your family.
Very, very nice. Who else we got?
Yeah, so DJ here. I very much enjoyed this movie. I was going into it with kind of a little bit of a negative mindset because initially all the people who had just trashed Man of Steel and BVS for so long are all of a sudden in love with the DC universe after this movie comes out. And it put me in fear that they had compromised and kind of just given people what they wanted, as far as just kind of, the Marvel formula of just kind of making a family comedy. But after seeing it, I realized that it's not what they did. I think the best way to describe this movie is it's very balanced, and it's probably one of the most balanced superhero movies of all time as far as tone, humor, violence, just style and performance. The actors hit all their marks. Gal Gadot and Chris Pine had great chemistry together. Gal proved everybody that she is a legitimate actor, or actress, whatever, and she really brought out the emotion of the character and the curiosity and the naivete. And Steve Trevor is just a great character because he's such a great complement to Wonder Woman. they complement each other very well, and I think they're exemplary of men and women being complementary to each other, because it kind of this movie kind of gives you the best form of feminism, which is, it's not all about women being better than men. It's about we all have something to bring to the table, and we can all make each other better. And I think that Wonder Woman puts across that point very well. And oh, there's just so much to love about that movie. There's a lot of slow-mo in the action sequences, and it gets it's not bad, but it's very like there's a lot of slow-mo. It's like 300 like amounts of slow-mo style. But it's good. Like all the action sequences are fantastic. And especially with like the Amazons and stuff, they're doing these incredible stunts and feats of strength and stuff that it's cool to see this in slow motion, because it's something we haven't really seen in anything in a superhero movie before, or at least this type. But if I do have any criticisms of this movie, it's not super ambitious, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it plays it fairly safe as far as things it does in the movie, but at the same time, everything that it does do, it does so well that it completely makes up for that aspect. So if I had to give this a rating, it'd probably be a solid 9 out of 10, if not a 10.
I like it. I like it. Great thoughts there. Great thoughts, everybody, guys.
We're good at
No,
thoughts.
but no, but personally, I think we're all very positive on it, and I definitely agree with that. I have a slightly different perspective than some of y'all because I actually saw it IMAX 3D. I splurged. I don't normally do that. It was not like a closed screening. Like it was the day before release, but they're being sold like normal tickets and stuff. It was kind of weird. Except I think they're probably a little more expensive. I don't know how much IMAX 3D normally costs. But anyhow,
More.
yeah, right. It was really enjoyable for starters. And something that I will touch on that James and Keith kind of touched on some was you hear people throw around the term Marvel a lot of reference to it. It was not, to me, did not once make me think of a Marvel movie. And I'll tell you why. The main thing that this did well, very exceptionally well, is there is humor, but the humor never takes away from the gravitas of a situation. And that to me is the ultimate difference. Because there's humor in the other DC films. It's harder to find, but it is there. But that's what I've noticed is kind of what's defined DC is that it doesn't cheapen serious moments. Even in Wonder Woman, there are serious moments, and it allows it to happen and makes it happens organically. And that's one of the biggest things praises I can give Wonder Woman is that for a film about an ancient being, or not an ancient being, I'm sorry, about an ancient race of Amazons, and with like a Grecian-based mythology and all that. It was incredibly organic and incredibly almost down to earth, which is very refreshing and very nice. So I definitely have high marks for it. And there is just like DJ said, the slow-mo. Some people might think it was too much. I mean, I don't know that you can do too much. It was pretty awesome. Stuff like that. It was just well done, very enjoyable. I would also give it probably a 9 out of 10. So that's I don't know. That's most of it for me.
The Amazons, man. Do not mess
Amazons.
with the Amazons. They will
Oh, that
mess
is
you up.
so true. Yeah. And I think that's another thing that I think really did well with Wonder Woman was the introduction was very well done. It was well, for starters, just the very, very beginning, but it's also doing it all from her perspective for the most part. very nice touch and very very nice way to just get you not encapsulated, accustomed to kind of her way of seeing things and all that. So very very well done on a ton of levels. Other thoughts we have? Any comparisons? Any thoughts on the Marvel DC conundrum?
Well,
I do have thoughts in regard to not necessarily Marvel DC, but it is related, and that is a lot of people have been saying they want what they got out of Wonder Woman in Superman, and I don't think that really works because she was naive to the ways of men at this point, and Superman had been living amongst men the entire time. So it is a different form of optimism, where her optimism is born out of not knowing any better, and Superman's is born out of believing the best of people, of seeing Pete Ross go from bully to friend, of really just experiencing time amongst humanity and seeing, actually, even the example of Steve Trevor in the movie would be an example of what Superman had already witnessed by the time he's an adult in Man of Steel. And I think the only way Wonder Woman's optimism actually worked in this film was through her naivete. And her brand of optimism is not what I want to see out of Superman.
Can we just pause and appreciate that every time, I don't know, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I always think it's naivety, or like, y'all naivete. Y'all put like this like
it's so
spin on
fancy.
it. Yeah, it's like naivete. I'm like, what is that?
I enjoy flourishes of language.
Was that all you had to say, Ryan?
Yeah, just about that particular point. I wanted to address that thought.
Yeah, I actually 100% agree with that. But I do see why people are thinking, and I think seeing this movie kind of helped me see what people have been really wanting out of Superman, and I think it also has to do with the style of these films, because in the movies that Superman has been involved in, he's been more of a passive protagonist rather than an active protagonist. A lot of things are more happening to him instead of him putting things into motion. So I think a lot of the things that he's dealing with are reactionary, while Wonder Woman is thrown into this world, and her belief system is already established. Superman's is evolving, as like you said, he's grown up in Earth, so he knows what mankind is. He just doesn't know exactly. He's so late in the game as far as exposing himself to the world, and Wonder Woman is who she has been, and she's jumping into this world of humanity and not really understanding it, thinking that it's looking at the world through rose-colored glasses and expecting that it's as simple as the stories that her mother tells her as a child. And unfortunately, the world is not that simple. It's a little more complicated, and I think that's what the movie does very well, is showing that, sometimes, the one big bad guy, or the one just stopping one evil person isn't gonna save the world. Sometimes people are just inherently evil, and sometimes they're good, and that's a hard lesson that she learns in the movie. And I think that just how well this movie is made, I think it really puts across that point very well.
Let me hop in and say this. Also, before I even get into that, I appreciate you guys' comments. You guys are spot on, and you actually took a lot of the words out of my mouth. So I'll actually keep this pretty brief. I think one of the reasons why the Wonder Woman type of optimism won't work for Superman is Superman is the center of the DC universe in a way that Wonder Woman isn't. It's not that Wonder Woman is a feminine auxiliary to Superman. That's not true at all. It's more like Superman is a type of character that has to go through the type of experiences that he's been through in the DCEU if we want to take him seriously as a moral center. Wonder Woman has many good qualities. She's courageous, she's brave, She's honest. She's morally upright, but she isn't the apex of moral probity that Superman is supposed to be, or at least that we've come to consider him to be as a character in DC Comics. So I don't think it would be appropriate for us to take that leap from existence to reverence so quickly. I think Superman, as the type of character that he's become, has to go through extreme and almost horrible circumstances to finally be accepted as the center of character that we want him to be. He has to go through something before we can take him seriously. We live in a cynical time.
Yeah.
So to me, Superman has to go through the type of experiences that have plagued him in the DCEU so far before.
He's also aware of the scrutiny that's on him.
Yeah. So before we can take him seriously as that moral center, he has to be tried to his extremities. So yeah, you guys are great. I hope I didn't say too much.
No, that was good. That was good. And talking about this comparison between the two, something I think, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like after watching Wonder Woman, I feel like the concept of like Man of Steel, if it had come out again now and like people saw it now, there would be a better reaction to it, honestly. Because they like it's almost like a catch-22 of like if it came out now, but also with the preface of there being time with these movies out. Because a lot of the themes we saw in Wonder Woman of a world that is not perfect and a person that sees good in the world despite that, and kind of us recognizing the goodness in that person despite that. That was a very roundabout way of saying things, but I think y'all can follow. I feel like it's a lot of similar themes, even though there are slightly different circumstances. It's just now people see them better than they could before because they understand even though they didn't necessarily enjoy previous DC movies, they understand them better. That might just be me, but I really feel like there would be a more positive reception of the Superman we see in Man of Steel should it have come out now. And I also think in comparison, not to ramble on too long, but a lot of people are saying about Wonder Woman, oh, they listened to us on Batman v Superman. They listened to how things went and they changed it for Wonder Woman. I absolutely do not think that's what happened. The nature of Batman v Superman is that it was the dawn of justice. The dawn being the darkest, it's always the darkest before the dawn. That was supposed to be the low point of the franchise so far as the seriousness, so far as what the characters were going through and what was happening. And Wonder Woman kind of represents that dawn in a lot of ways. So naturally, her story, her arc, will have a lot of those elements that some people thought we didn't have at all, but that, or maybe not as much. And I think that was a strong thing that people don't realize. And again, in Justice League, when we get Superman back, assumedly, I feel like he will be a Superman a lot more people would quote unquote recognize,
But
and it won't be
Superman is
because they
dead.
changed. Oh, I know, right? The earth, the ground didn't move around his coffin at all at the end. But I feel like he's going to be a much more recognizable Superman to those that had trouble recognizing him, even despite him being himself, because these changes have taken place. Yeah, didn't mean to ramble on that long, but just some thoughts I had.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I agree with pretty much what you're saying. Now, one thing that I also wanted to say real quick is that this movie ties in so well with the universe that's already been established, and it enhances so much. And I'll get a little bit deeper into this when we get into the spoiler section, but I think that this movie is so good, and the one thing that it does is it enhances the rest of the movies in the universe, and it makes them just a little bit better and more enjoyable because you get the background. It establishes the world that these movies are set in, and it further establishes the tone that this is not a perfect world where your actions are inconsequential. There are consequences, and the effects of what happened do resonate across each film. And Wonder Woman's experiences in this movie, you understand where she's at in Batman v Superman, and it gives you a little bit more of an in-depth look into her psyche and her motivation. But anyways, yeah. So that's as much as I'll say before we get into spoilers later. So
Yeah, something that I think that you said, Ryan, that I actually really agree with, or not Ryan, sorry, Joseph, is that I do think Man of Steel would have been better received because I too saw a lot of similarities. They both serve in a large way as a criticism of mankind, but neither leave it at that. Both the final conclusion of both films is that there's still hope. And that's the same thing with Batman versus Superman. And so I think that if we had seen this, if Wonder Woman started off the DCEU and we get some of these ideas that mankind, is very messed up, but we still have this idea of hope, and then it's not all doom and gloom with men just because they're not perfect. And then Man of Steel came out, and people are watching that, and they get the, Jor-El's line, they will stumble, they will fall, but in time, they will join you in the sun. That would be two movies back to back that have this repeated idea that, yes, problems happen, not just to men, but because of men. But if they are given an ideal to strive for, there is reason to hope. And so I think that the optimism that Man of Steel is full of, I just don't think people saw. I think people would be more willing to see it had Wonder Woman ease them into the DCEU.
Definitely. Any other thoughts, real quick, non-spoiler? Any other ideas, things you want to throw out, anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I had one last thing I wanted to say. Just shout out to Patty Jenkins for not having directed a feature film in 14 years, I think. She delivered on a large-scale movie in almost every conceivable way. So really, really big ups to her. And I hope this kind of encourages Hollywood to take female directors seriously and allow them to show what they can do on the big screen and not just relegate them to smaller indie movies.
Definitely. The same for female protagonists too. Because even nowadays, it still feels like we have, unless it is a movie about like girls' night out or something, we still have a very male protagonist-driven movie kind of not what's the word? Culture. Even though we're getting a much more balanced culture, we still kind of have this male protagonist lead thing, it feels like. So I'm glad to see things shaking up there.
It's the patriarchy, man.
Damn the patriarchy! Ah! But I do wanna transition at this point a little bit, going from saying thoughts on the movie itself to where Wonder Woman actually falls when it comes to the DCEU, what ranking we have for it, where we feel like it falls in the sense of what was the best, what was the worst, all of that. So just throwing it out there. Like for me personally, I have a very tough time ranking the DC movies. If I were to do it based off of what the critics seem to think, then the critics would definitely rate it at Wonder Woman top, probably Man of Steel second, Suicide Squad third, and Batman v Superman fourth. But I don't think many of us agree with the critics. So, who among us would like to start us off on some rankings? Maybe give some reasoning why.
I will start us off if no one else wants to. I'm going to start from the bottom up. I think, incredibly enough, the Oscar-winning achievement Suicide Squad is going to be my least liked DCEU movie. Whew, had a hard time getting that out. I was so caught up on the Oscar winning that I
know.
the rest of the point.
It's so flashy.
And I think, it had its good moments, but I think it was mostly overwhelmed by some inconsistent story and inconsistent thematic content. So it's at the bottom for me. Third, and this may change after a couple more viewings, but I think Wonder Woman is going to be my third most liked DCEU movie. I think the themes are strong. They're consistently portrayed throughout. I think there are some good performances in the movie, and I love it. Like, I'm going to see it probably 5 or 6 times before it leaves the theaters. Second, for me, would be Man of Steel. I think it's in the top 10 comic book movies of all time discussion. I think Henry Cavill produced Superman for the modern age. He really brings the Superman character out of this cultural imagination that we have around Christopher Reeve Superman, and he brings it to a place where people like me who hadn't grown up with Superman can identify with him so strongly and can appreciate him as a character, even if we didn't start out that way. And lastly, in my most controversial opinion, I think Batman v Superman is in the top 5 comic book movies of all time discussion. So for me, it's going to take quite a film to knock that out of the number 1 spot. And that doesn't mean anything bad about Wonder Woman. I still love Wonder Woman. I love Man of Steel. But for me, it's always going to be BVS, Man of Steel, and Wonder Woman probably until the end of time.
Yeah, so, I guess I'll go next. I'll start from bottom up as well, and I think probably Suicide Squad will probably all be our number 4. I think emotionally, I really liked it. It was fun, but looking at it objectively, it's a complete mess. The first 45 minutes to me are incredibly fun, but as soon as that helicopter crashes, it just falls apart. The editing is horrible. The pacing is pretty much non-existent. So it's characters that I like doing things that I like, but told in an incredibly just choppy way. Number 3 would be Wonder Woman as well. There mainly because I think really the top 3 are all really, really good movies, and it's just personal preference. But for me, Wonder Woman.
No, it isn't. We're just right, James.
Okay, that's true. So Wonder Woman is objectively number 3, and to me, it's because, and I'll get into this like whenever we go into spoilers, but I think the first 2/3 are great, but there's a couple scenes that kind of drag. But for the most part, I think the first 2/3 are just perfect. I think the final act, I have several issues with. Issues that I don't have at all with number 1 and 2. Number 2 being Man of Steel. To me, that was one of the first times that I had seen a superhero movie kind of completely break genre conventions. It had a villain that felt as developed as the lead almost. I think Michael Shannon as Zod is freaking perfect. Visually, it was just stunning. It felt in a lot of ways like a sci-fi, which to me a Superman movie should, given that he is an alien. And I think what made it really resonate with me is you have a character like Superman, who he's the last of his kind on a foreign planet, and to me that premise is ripe for like storytelling that involves feelings of isolationism, desires to be accepted, what it would be like to try to integrate into a society like that. And none of the other Superman movies, as much as I like them, have tackled that. So it's just such a mature way to tell the story that we all know so well. And then number 1, Batman vs Superman: The Ultimate Edition is my favorite comic book movie. I think that it works on more levels than possibly any other comic book movie I've seen. It's you can almost see like it's a criticism of modern journalism and media, the way it misrepresentation and having a bias leads to an entire population being misinformed about events. Superman is the villain because the media doesn't understand him, and because the media doesn't understand him, the world doesn't understand him. It has a villain who doesn't, at any point in the movie, really say with direct words why he opposes him. But after multiple rewatches, and you continue to see all of the different layers to him, you come to realize that he's opposed to Superman because Superman embodies everything that he can't stand. But he doesn't say that. So it requires the viewer to pay attention to everything about all of these characters. It takes incredibly bold and ambitious decisions with all of our major characters like Batman. It brings him lower than any other movie has, but then ends up towards the end bringing him back to a position that I would say is higher than any other movie ever has. I just think it's possibly the most ambitious and mature with its themes comic book movie I've seen.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I'm gonna pop in next. Not hop in, pop in. Haha. I'm unique. And of course, like the rest of them said, I think Suicide Squad is gonna be the lowest. I did actually enjoy Suicide Squad. It was enjoyable. I describe it. It's like cotton candy. You enjoy it in the moment, and afterwards, it just kind of you realize there wasn't much left for you in the stomach. Like you don't really get much from it afterwards. But in the moment, it's very enjoyable, very sweet, very colorful. See, good comparison. I'm good at this. But number three is and I'm gonna explain this for you people, other people that have said the list. Number three is actually gonna be Batman v Superman for me. The reasoning being, as much as we want the Ultimate Edition to be the movie we saw, it was not the movie we got. And as much as I even appreciated the theatrical cut, there were a lot of good things in it. I really do love both versions. It is specific, and specifically, I love the Ultimate Edition. Fantastic things that James and Kiefer were touching on. There were shortcomings in the theatrical version that it was very interesting. I watched the Ultimate and then I actually watched the theatrical again, and it made me kind of see it through the lens of people that don't understand as well when I realized all the things that were missing. And so coming from that perspective, I can understand some of the dislike it got. It did get way more than it deserved, and it was overhated and bandwagon hated. But it did have its flaws. It still did great things when it came to combining superheroes and have great philosophical discussions, which I can get into all day, but I won't right now. Number two, though, for me is a tough choice. Number two and number one are incredibly tight. All of them are incredibly tight, honestly. But think I just have to edge Wonder Woman as just below Man of Steel. Part of the reason for that being that Wonder Woman came out now, whereas Man of Steel came out first. Honestly, timing is a big part of it. Because Wonder Woman has continued with these themes, and I don't know, it's pretty much even with Man of Steel, because where Man of Steel gave birth to the DC universe as it is now, Wonder Woman is sort of about to use DC words here. It is the rebirth for many people, even though we recognize that it is a natural flow of the movies. For a lot of people, this is the first time they're legitimately looking at the DC universe again. And Wonder Woman really did an amazing thing in that. And it's done a fantastic job as a movie, and I absolutely loved it. Then number one, like I said, is Man of Steel. And part of that, again, is because I absolutely just, the fact that it started off like this, that it was bold and both carried the same messages of hope that Superman always should, but put it in a real environment, it really is just fascinating to me. And I thought that the casting was on point. I thought the action was phenomenal. It was a very well done balance of grandiose, but also getting to see the individuals fight, and plenty of it too. It just was really good. So yeah, overall, that's where I'd have to rank it. But again, Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, they're all like very, very tight.
Yeah.
Hey, now I was in after jailbait Joe.
Oh, you were?
Oh man, Ryan's getting sass here.
I am. And I'm gonna start with my typical comment. I disagree. I disagree so hard right now.
Oh man, with who?
A
Everybody.
lot of you. No, but seriously, I think we can all agree Suicide Squad is the lowest quality.
But you disagree.
I'm not there yet. This is the universal part. I think Suicide Squad is on a league of its own in a bad way in the DCEU. It's good
I
for.
still don't think it was a bad movie. Just throwing out there.
I'm not saying it's a
It
bad
just
movie,
wasn't
but
a great movie.
it's nowhere near in the same league as the other three. And I'm going to say something here that's probably going to trigger a lot of people, but I don't think Wonder Woman is in the same league as Man of Steel or Batman vs. Superman. Now, Wonder Woman was a great film. I am not in any way besmirching it. I think it was a fine addition to the DCEU. It did exactly what it needed to do. I was happy with it. But I'm actually kind of shocked and disappointed that it's being elevated to a point where I just don't think it deserves to be. And I think it's number 3 for me because it was great, but at the end of the day, I didn't leave that movie thinking any harder about it than I did going in. And it met my expectations, but that's just it. It didn't exceed them. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. The performances were solid. Action was good. Plot was totally fine, but it didn't challenge me at all. That being said, I loved BVS and Man of Steel, but I'm going to give BVS very slightly the number 2 spot. I really go back and forth between BVS and Man of Steel. But I want to say something here that I know a lot of you are going to disagree with, but I don't think the Ultimate Edition of the film added so much that it changed the film for me. I think it was already a solid piece in the theatrical release, and much of what people complained about not being there was easily inferable. I think that, and if it wasn't inferable, it just wasn't important at all to the story. We don't need to know that the chair was lead-lined. All we needed to know is that Superman missed it. And I think that it was good. I love the Ultimate Edition. I will gladly watch it. I'll pop it in every time over the theatrical release. But I don't think it was this movie-changing thing people made it out to be. I think it was their apology for trashing an already solid film. And then, of course, my number 1 has to go to Man of Steel because it's just great. It's just, I think that's one case where we are in agreement on. A lot of us are in agreement on is that Man of Steel was a quintessential origin story. I will actually go ahead and say it'll edge out Batman Begins for me as the quintessential origin story.
Wow.
Which is a bit hard to do. I love Batman Begins, but
I don't know what y'all are talking about. Spider-Man was clearly the best origin story of any of them.
You mean the Amazing Spider-Man?
No, I mean
Catwoman starring Halle Berry.
that's it. That's
a DC movie.
You mean X-Men Origins
You
Wolverine?
stop that.
You mean X-Men Origins Wolverine? It was the
definitely.
Deadpool origin story. No.
Oh, you mean Green Lantern?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Fantastic Four.
But
There it is.
Which
But-
one?
But in all seriousness, though, Man of Steel so coherently defined exactly everything Superman is about optimism in the face of a horrible, dying, terrible world. And I really, really enjoyed that. And it's something that I get pumped up every time I see that movie, and the action is flawless. We'd never seen fight scenes quite like that with superheroes, with these titans clashing, and I just can't emphasize how great that is. Now it barely edges out BVS for me, and I'll probably change next week, but there it is. There's my list.
Lovely. All right, is there anybody before me? Can I go now?
You have permission, DJ.
I
There's
have the
no-
floor.
That's right.
So, yeah, but mine is probably going to be more similar to Ryan's. I got to go with Suicide Squad at number 4, and I'm not even going to... So number three would be Wonder Woman, mainly because, it's a great movie, but, and I anything I say is not to take away from the movie, but just to say how much I do enjoy and think how important the next two movies are. But Wonder Woman, I think this also aligns with some of the criticisms that I made about it not being super ambitious. I think what Wonder Woman does is it gives affirmation to the world that has been created, and it further explores just the cynicism of the world, and that it's a very cynical world, and not all people are inherently good or as good as she might think. And I think it does more to enhance the universe than to further it, if that makes sense. And but it does also enhance the movies that I'm before, which I do really appreciate. But number 2, I would probably go with BVS, even though I've probably seen BVS, especially the extended Ultimate Edition, more than I've probably watched that movie more than any movie I've ever seen, because it's a movie that you can continue to get things out of and notice little things, and it's there's just a lot more than meets the eye with Batman v Superman, and I think a lot of people are unwilling to recognize that a movie can have more depth than what is seen at face value, because we're so conditioned to in your face entertainment and things that don't go deeper than the surface level. And I think that the DC universe challenges that status quo, and I think that's why BVS is so good to me. The number 1, I would go with obviously Man of Steel. That's the remaining one, because it like Ryan said, it very much established this universe and the tone and what kind of world we're being introduced to. This is not a comic book world where the civilization and society doesn't really matter. The things it's a very relevant world. This is a modern day. This is the world of the millennial, and this generation. It's very reflective of that, and how the media can turn things around so quickly, and it also discusses xenophobia and people being afraid of things that they don't understand, and people just not being ready to see the goodness in things, and usually pointing out the bad. What I think is that the DC world or universe is a world where everything is great, but nobody is happy. And I think that's very relevant to the world that we live in. We have cell phones that can literally do anything you want to, but people still complain about the smallest things. We have superheroes that are literally saving the world, and we have the audacity to blame them for property damage, which, I get, and I get that. And I think it further affirms that this is a universe with consequence, and things matter. Explosions matter. Fights in the middle of a city matter. The collapse of buildings matter. And things that happen in one movie affect what happens in the other movies. And I think that these movies have have done that better than probably any superhero franchise that we've ever seen. And I think that's why these movies are very important. especially in this modern age. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about my rankings.
Very nice, very nice. Anybody not gone yet? We got Ryan, Keith, me, James, DJ. Nope, that's everybody. Very nice. It's interesting to me to see. Well, one, I'm very alone. Uh, two, the kind of the battle that we have here between in the importance of Wonder Woman, where most of y'all were putting it at 3, but I don't know. I felt it was stronger than that, and it was very interesting. And I think part of it comes down to, I think it was you, DJ, that mentioned the enhancement Wonder Woman brought
Yep.
versus adding. And I don't know. Maybe it's a personality thing, but I actually am very much a believer at enhancing a universe is almost more important than adding to it. So that was an aspect. The fact that it was consistent with the other films, but brought it in sort of not a different light, but put it in a different perspective, a different part and time of the world, but was still the same world, meant more to me than I think it meant to y'all. So that might be some of the reasons why. I don't know.
Well, also to defend my stance on putting it as number 3, and probably a lot of the others who have put it at that, it's not a detriment to the quality of the film. It's just about what it brings to the table compared to the two above it. And I think they're all top tier superhero movies, but I
think we all agree there for sure.
Yeah, I just think that the other two edge Wonder Woman out in certain categories that make them rise above.
And like I said earlier, one of my biggest reasons that Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice is a number 3 is because you cannot shake the reality that, as great as the Ultimate Cut was, and I even agree with some of the arguments I've seen that it does not necessarily change the movie as much as people say it does. It does change it enough that there is a tangible difference between the two with actual ramifications so far as a movie goes. And the fact is, most casual viewers have seen the theatrical cut and not the ultimate. And so that's almost kind of what I have to rate it by. So given that,
That's a great thing.
I put it at 3.
Yeah, let me hop in for a second and say, first of all, great thoughts, everybody. But again, as someone that ranks Wonder Woman below Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, that doesn't mean that I'm failing to reflect on the importance of this movie. I think it has financial and historical importance, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't understand that. But I also think that if I'm ranking it objectively, I just think there are some things that Man of Steel and Batman v Superman do that I enjoy more, or that I assign more credit and significance to when I'm performing the act of criticism. So I'm not trying to take away anything from Wonder Woman. For me, it would be like talking about the Avengers. There are some problems with the Avengers, thematically, narratively, and in the technical aspects of it. But it's a majorly important film, and we can't just overlook that when talking about the film and assessing its relative importance to the comic book movie genre or to filmmaking as a whole. So for me, I think it's possible to do two things when talking about the Wonder Woman movie. A, judge it based on technical respects, ideas of literary criticism that we all kind of share, and also talk about its importance as a female-led film, as a film that might re-energize the DC franchise and shows the progression of comic book movies over time. So again, I think it's possible to do those two things without necessarily saying anything bad about one movie or another. So I just want to put that out there so people don't get it confused.
Definitely. Good. As we are off to say, good thoughts all around, everybody. Well done. I'm gonna give you a little hand clap here. Hope you can hear that. Good job. All right, so that's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Michael, we have bringing in our comic book expert, Michael. Gonna talk some Wonder Woman in that side of the scene. So that's cool. Say hi, Michael.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hey, yep, there he is. Before you get started, though, I have one thing. I asked everybody else, and I have to ask you too. Wonder Woman has a lot of cool equipment, but if you could have like just one of the piece of equipment from her, what would it be?
Oh, I'd probably have to go with the invisible plane too. I deal with a lot of traffic where I live.
The
And,
practicality.
It'd probably save other people's lives from me having to like actually get around traffic. Traffic in the DFW Metroplex really is terrible. And I travel for work a lot, so man, that'd be great. I love it.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love it. Fantastic. So what have you got for us?
Oh, have you guys been talking about the movie that came out this weekend or anything?
Oh yeah, you
We
know
mentioned
it.
Yeah, there's this little film called Wonder Woman. Man, what to say? Comicsology. If you read comics digitally, which I really do not, but if you happen to be one of those people who likes the convenience and portability of reading comics digitally on an iPad or a laptop or even a nice mobile phone, Comicsology had a like 80% off sale of a lot of Wonder Woman titles. You can get a lot of volumes like trades for like $5, like $5.99. I don't know. I mean, this podcast will probably drop soon. I think the sale ends tomorrow, Monday.
Ooh, it might be just too late.
Yeah, but I bet sometimes they'll continue on sale. The sale may not be as extensive as it is right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it carried on, maybe later than the date that it's supposedly ending.
Yeah, good to know.
Some great storylines to pick up on if people want to get caught up on Wonder Woman or have never picked up a Wonder Woman comic and maybe they saw the movie and loved it and want to know more about Diana. Check out Cliff Chang and Brian Azzarello's run on the New 52. I think they did volumes 1 through 6. Azzarello kind of retconned her origin a little bit, the supposed clay origin that they kind of toyed with in the movie. And I think the Finches took over the back half of that run, which I really enjoyed their art. A lot of people did not. That was really excellent. Also, the Rebirth run that Greg Rucka is writing, Wonder Woman's Rebirth. I think I picked up the first few issues, and it's pretty excellent. Rucka's a great writer. Not sure who is doing art on that. Oh, also, it's pretty awesome. Sorry guys, I'm having trouble reading my notes in the dark here. With,
yeah.
my power is currently out, and I'm sitting by the window trying to get the last bit of daylight coming through, so I can read my notes to you guys.
Power on, bro.
Dedication.
In dedication, I'm trying to bring you guys something. But in Rucka's Rebirth run, Steve Trevor's like a hardcore special ops kind of guy.
Ooh.
And Etta Candy, who was featured in the film pretty prominently, is almost like an Amanda Waller. She's like running Spec Ops.
Yo.
And she's
awesome.
she's a heavier set black female.
So she is Amanda Waller.
Female woman.
Yeah,
female woman.
Yeah, she's a black female woman. Yes. Also, like apart from some of the comics, maybe check out the Justice League War animated film. I think DJ and I were kind of talking about that yesterday. There's a scene in that film, as well as a panel from the New 52 Justice League Origins, that was featured in the film with the ice cream. It's in it.
Oh, I geeked out at that scene.
Yeah, I thought I was the only one who caught that too. I think that was something special that was put in there for people like us.
Yeah.
When she tastes ice cream from the vendor. It was like, oh, this is wonderful. You should be so proud.
She delivers
Oh.
it so perfectly too.
Oh, so that'd be great if that was like a running joke through like her other
Wonder
films.
Woman and ice cream.
Yeah,
Just
That'd be
like
great.
a Wayne truck just like drives by her place and like opens up and it's just like got tubs of ice cream in it. Or,
Oh,
no, wait,
yeah.
wait. Am I making this up? Or in Batman v Superman, is she eating ice cream when she's on the couch and reading emails? Am I making that up?
Oh, no way.
Guess I gotta watch
Was
the
she?
movie again.
I gotta
know,
wa-
right? I might be
I-
making that up. I could very well be making that up.
I just watched it
She's-
yesterday again, and I
So
don't
that's
remember
probably a
seeing that.
no.
Oh, also more on the animated tip. Watch Justice League Unlimited, the episode "This Little Piggy," where Wonder Woman gets transformed into a pig by Cersei.
Oh yes,
Oh,
I
wow.
remember that.
One of
I know
the-
exactly what you're talking about.
That is one of the best episodes. And Kevin Conroy as Batman singing "Am I Blue"
Oh,
is one of my
I've
favorite moments
seen
of that
that
entire.
scene.
it's
I've
so
seen
good.
that
great.
specific scene.
I mean, Justice League's still on Netflix. If you got Netflix, pull it up and watch the episode. It is
I'll have to
fantastic.
watch the whole thing. That sounds good.
Also, just to hop in real quick, the relationship between Wonder Woman and Batman in the Justice League Unlimited and the regular Justice League series, I feel like they're kind of going that route in these films. You can kind of see a little bit of a taste in that.
Yeah, definitely. There's a little something there.
A little tension.
Little tension. Also,
No,
I
that's
mean,
great.
Wonder Woman had her own animated film. Like it was like 3 or 4 years ago. So check that out.
Very
as well.
nice. Very nice.
Back to the comic tip. DC Comics is crushing it right now with their rebirth titles. I'm still trying to save money to jump on some trades I'm looking at. But coming up, there's a pretty sizable event happening this summer called Dark Days, headed up by Scott Snyder, who most Batman fans know, and James Tynion IV. Art by Jim Lee, John Romita, and Andy Kubert, a bunch of other guys. It looks to be a spectacular little event. I had more written down, but I can't read my notes right now. So if you're interested in more DC work from Scott Snyder, look it up. There's an event called Dark Days: The Forge that drops in June, I think later this month, and then in July it's followed up by I think Metal, and like it's a dark universe that Scott Snyder's been working on.
Now, is this related to the Doomsday Clock that we've been hearing about?
I don't know if they're going to tie in it or it's going to be a separate event. I
Gotcha.
think the Doomsday Clock might be the running in Rebirth. I think the whole Dark
I
Days
think that's Rebirth. Yeah.
and Metal event is going to be a separate thing, but I'm not positive.
Oh, okay. See, I gotta catch up on all these comics because I keep forgetting these universes are different.
It's difficult when you got no cash like me. Like you guys call me the comics expert, but I'm the broke comics wannabe right now.
That makes you
I'm-
all the more relevant to somebody like me. You know?
I'm trying to stay up on things, but I seem to get like months and months behind. But read some DC comics. DC's killing it. Marvel is still selling comics, but I don't know what.
But Captain America's still a Nazi.
Yeah.
Oh,
Man.
tragic.
Cool. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think I'm good.
Very nice. Well,
It's been
thank
my
you,
pleasure,
Michael.
gentlemen.
yeah. Thank you for powering through the power outage. That's some good stuff right there. Reading by the window light. You're killing it, bro. Just like
Thanks a lot,
power
gentlemen.
killed your house, or the electricity got killed in your house, I should say. Thanks a lot, man. All right. With that, this is going to be the warning is now. We are going to be approaching spoiler time.
Oh,
So if you have
yeah.
not seen the movie yet, I personally would recommend you just pause the podcast, go to your nearest theater, watch the movie, and come back.
Buy a ticket first, or you'll get asked to leave.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Thank you. So with that, spoilers are officially allowed. So just stop right now if you're not ready for them. Ryan, what have you got? What thoughts do you have?
I just got to say that as far as this film goes, I think that overall, fantastic movie. Like I've said many times, I can't help but praise it and everything it did right. There are some things I think could have been handled a little better, or there were routes they were almost going that I think they should have. To give you an example, there was talk about Ares asking for the armistice, and like his talk of peace obviously being bogus. But I think that could have been used to great effect to show him really sowing the seeds for World War II. Like him recognizing that this war is winding down, it's coming to a close. But him being the god of war is interested in his self-perpetuation to the point where he's willing to have a temporary peace if it sets up an even bigger catastrophe down the road. And I think that initially, honestly, when I started hearing talk about the armistice, I was thinking that's where they were going to go with it. But they took a bit of a different route with Ares. I'm not displeased, but I think I would have liked it better if there had been some kind of acknowledgement that Ares is also still very much in command. I do like the approach they had about him saying, well, it's not just me. Mankind sucks all on their own. I love that bit. But I would appreciate if he had shown some competence and some potency by being a bit of an orchestrator of it. I do like the whispering in the ear thing. I was talking with Kiefer, and we were mentioning it would have been great to have him like monologue about how many times in history he had nudged things just to go right. Like
that would have been great.
Yeah, like talking to Genghis Khan and getting him going, and on a horse beside Napoleon, whispering in his ear type thing. Just really pushing things for war, advancing it for his own power's sake. Because in the comics we get this idea that Ares wants war because he's strongest in war, and he thrives in it, and he doesn't want to exterminate mankind, but wants to perpetuate war endlessly. And so I think that could have gone a little better. That being said, I love what they did with it overall. Not the story I would have written, but very well done.
Interesting. And yeah, something I personally thought was kind of in not opposition of you, but it's like conjunction and opposition. It's this idea that I actually really appreciated the way it worked. And I definitely get where you're going with that they could have gone bigger with it, and that would have been cool. But I do think one thing that I liked that they did was they made Ares as a antagonist, from his perspective, be very reasonable and because he sees humanity kind of how this is gonna be a little mind twist. He sees humanity as Batman saw Superman, as this being, this thing that can only cause more war and only cause more of that kind of era of thing. And I really feel like I loved that take, and this idea that he gets his power, like he is the god of war, but he is trying to utilize it to create a utopia. And I loved that take, and I thought it was interesting that he gets his power from there, but it's not even what he desires. He was desiring to create his own flood, if you will, and just cleanse the world of humanity. So that was just my own thoughts.
And I don't know if anyone's in, but
I think we got Kiefer. You had some thoughts.
Oh, go right ahead, DJ.
Okay, well, I was just gonna make a quick comment, and then I'll let whoever goes. But I also think that Ares he also wanted to, because I think the gods were looking at humanity through rose-colored glasses. A lot of the ways that Wonder Woman was. And with Ares killing all the gods and then nearly killing Zeus, he also wanted to prove that humanity is not as great as they think they are. And he wanted, and I think more so his motivation for that was proving that humanity is not good. So I think the way I interpreted the movie, I think that was more his motivation than it was the utopian idea. But
Right,
that's
right,
just
right.
me.
The idea of there would be that without humanity is more.
Right.
I wanted to say this is probably the biggest spoiler that we all knew going into the movie if you really appreciated the comics. Steve Trevor dying. And
So sad.
I think not only was that emotionally wrenching, I think they pulled it off very well. I think Gal always been a good face actor, but she really sold it with her face during that scene.
Mhm.
She really portrayed
the flashback.
her emotionality like really, really well
Oh.
when Steve died. And I want to actually make a parallel between that and BVS because in Wonder Woman, Steve Trevor is a person that awakens Wonder Woman's conscience on the island of Themyscira. He tells her that there's this great and terrible war happening, and that if he doesn't find a way to stop it, millions more will be lost. That awakens her conscience. She realizes that she has a duty to defend the world. Interesting, isn't it, that Steve Trevor dying actually pulls her out of the world, and then the appearance of another person that awakens her conscience, Superman, is going to propel her to Justice League, but he dies as well. So like one death in Wonder Woman takes her out of the world, and then another one, Superman, actually propels her back into her kind of heroic role. I think that's the point of the ending. The ending of Wonder Woman would not have worked without BVS, which is kind of why I think Man of Steel should have been released the place it was instead of being released later, as some people said. I think that the ending where she's hopeful and she's flying towards her future, that only makes sense if she realizes that Superman, the most powerful and good person that she knew, the most heroic individual over the last 100 years that she's experienced in the world, had actually shown her that contra Ares, humanity is worth fighting for, even if it's for that one person that you love. So I think her understanding the Superman story and seeing his sacrifice kind of does the same thing that Steve Trevor does on the island of Themyscira. She becomes a hero because of those two people who died. And of course, Superman's coming back, and Steve Trevor definitely isn't. But I thought that was a really, really great parallel between the two movies.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to clarify really quick. When I've talked about Man of Steel coming out after Wonder Woman or something, I meant that I don't think it would belong in that order. I was more referring to the theoretical of how people would react to it. But yeah, great idea and great point there. James, though, I think you're coming in hot. What you got for us, man?
So my connections has been kind of spotty, so I'm just gonna preface this by saying that I loved Wonder Woman. I think it is one of the better superhero movies having been released through recent years. But I want to get some of my criticism, now that we're in spoilers, I want to get some of my criticisms out of the way in case my internet completely crashes. But one of the things was I actually really liked their take on Ares. I love that he says, I'm not the god of war. Like this idea that he doesn't even think that title belongs to him. I'm the god of truth, the truth about mankind. I love the fact that he said, I didn't make any of them do this. I gave them ways to do it, but they did it of their own volition. Like that is such an interesting concept, and it completely, I think that reveal is necessary for Wonder Woman's arc and the worldview that she has in BVS. I think it's necessary for that to work, for her to realize that he didn't orchestrate it. But what I did not like about the character was that, to me, for a last minute twist to work, you've got to put a lot of effort into it. You've got to really set it up so that it can be appreciated on repeat viewings. And whenever you like pull the rug out from under us, I want to be able to like, oh man, yeah, I should have seen that. Or like there's so much setup. to me, whenever they say, "Ha, got you," Ludendorff wasn't Ares, it was him. It's like, and then you're saying like you thought it was Ludendorff. To me, I'm saying, of course I thought it was Ludendorff. You told me it was. When she broke the her new whatever Dr. Poison had given him that new gas, she says this will restore your strength, implying that he had strength, and he now looks like he looks like he's walking with a limp. He's not physically strong, and to me it implies that there was a time where he was like very powerful. That helps, the thought that he's a god, and then he just happens to have a lot of knowledge on gods. Oh, you know nothing of the gods. Like, what are the odds that the one person she thinks is Ares happens to have all of this knowledge on Greek mythology and insatiable appetite for war, much like the god of war? It gets, they pull the rug out and say, it's not this guy. But to me, it's so obviously that everything about that man's existence was to be as close to Ares without actually being a god. And it's just kind of unfair to say it's really this guy when there's almost no. I don't feel like it earned that reveal. And whenever I think his being in support of the armistice was meant to throw us off, like, Ares wouldn't want peace, and that's all this guy wants. And then so I'm waiting to understand why he supported the armistice. And the only reveal that I heard was, I orchestrated an armistice that I know they couldn't keep. Well, why orchestrate an armistice in the first place if they're already at war? They're already trying to destroy each other. What's the point of orchestrating an armistice that they can't keep, which will cause them to go back to fighting? Why stop the fighting if they are fighting? Other than, well, we want a way to throw this guy off the scent, so let's have him be in support of this armistice. It did make sense, at least to me. And then the only other the other bigger issue that I had with the final act was the last battle, especially in comparison to Snyder's finales. It's really bland. It's just kind of a CGI fest, and a lot of the CGI doesn't really look good. The camera is not particularly interesting. And at the very end, she just shoots him with this power beam, and that's it. Like, it's almost Iron Man 2 levels of like anticlimactic, in my opinion. So those were my bigger issues. I just thought that the reveal wasn't earned. It being the man who it turns out to be, I don't think really worked, and I think they cheaply caused us to believe that Ludendorff was Ares, and it wasn't properly set up. And then the finale just had too much CGI without any sort of actual fighting choreography, like Superman and Zod. And then the last big energy beam, to me, just felt like a really quick, very generic comic booky way to kill your villain.
Interesting points, definitely. Anything else you were gonna pop in there?
That's it for now.
Okay, I don't know, because I really want to respond to that. That's a lot of interesting thoughts. Where to start? I thought it was interesting, one, that you thought Ludendorff was Ares. That from the get go was the first thing you said that I never thought Ludendorff was Ares.
So I guess I should clarify. I didn't really think that he was, but mainly because I had the movie spoiled for me before I saw it.
Oh.
But just, I guess whenever I was saying that, I'm meaning as in terms of like the general audience. It's the movie is just very clearly baiting you into thinking that this is Ares. Like, it's...
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think it's really earned, because now, with that in mind, rewatching it, his obsession with Greek gods, his power to... Like, that gas, they made that gas going into his nose look supernatural. Like, gas doesn't inherently light up, and I can understand that it's the comic book, but just the way he physically reacted to this gas and gave him the superhero strength and his just need for war, he was built, he as a character exists to fool you into thinking he's Ares. He's not his own character. He exists to fool the audience, and I think as in retrospect that hurts his character.
He is a massive red herring.
Yeah, it's something that I was thinking though in watching the film was, while he absolutely is built as sort of the Ares archetype, I think that lends a lot to the plot, the story, because the entire reveal of Ares is this idea that the war hungry, the crazy, just blood, 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 all of that, that isn't the danger in war, or even, not even like that's not the real danger of war. How to formulate my ideas, my thoughts here. That Ludendorff is the example of kind of the classic hungry individual and his obsession with strife and anger and that. But the reality of war is not that it's a bunch of bloodthirsty, crazy people all trying to kill each other. It's that it's very it's that idea of the general that's behind the lines that Diana talked about. That idea of this person behind everything that is fine with sacrifice. Or in the case with Ares, the idea with the armistice, I thought was very deserved, because that whole concept, the point of the armistice, is that, take the Civil War for instance. Had it ended just a little sooner under a peace, like, think of all the damage that we still have from having a kind of unresolved ending of the Civil War. We still have in our country. But had it ended even sooner under a peace treaty that was done for the sake of just getting peace before things were resolved at all, and before any of that had happened, war would have broken out again almost certainly, and even harsher than before. It's like making it swelter. It's taking the rage that is referred to in other DC films, and it's making it so it just has to sit and simmer and heat up. Whereas had the war reached its conclusion, somebody would have won. There would have, as the North won in the Civil War, there would have been a clear victor. There would have been all of that. Whereas in an armistice, in a world war, just like a basic treaty, when there isn't really a clear resolution, it just causes those feelings to fester. And so I thought a lot of that was very deserved. My thoughts are a little scattered at the moment, though, so I'm going to go ahead and let somebody else take the floor.
Yeah, so that's pretty good analysis as far as the whole Ludendorff thing goes. Also, for anybody who doesn't know, he is a real historical figure. And I listened to a bit of a interview with, not Catherine Bigelow, Patty Jenkins, about the character. And obviously this is prior to the movie being spoiled, so it's still as if he's the villain. So she's talking about how their inspiration for his character was that historically his actions and his philosophies do very much line up with Ares. So I think, in fairness, I think his character being pushed that route also lends to the whole mankind not needing much inspiration to do evil.
That's what it was. That was the point I was trying to make, was that Ludendorff was human.
So I mean,
that was the point.
Exactly, and Ludendorff, I mean, most of that was by his own accord, and he was probably going to get to that point anyways, and it further affirms that humanity can be terrible all by itself. It doesn't need the influence of gods. Also, as far as the gods go, and them not needing to influence them that much, it also adds to the conversation about the separation between God and man, and the creation of man, and predestination, and man sort of being on puppet strings, and it also helps kind of give you a little more insight into Lex Luthor's hatred of Superman, because he projects his hatred of God onto him, and just, I am sure, because Lex did talk about the myth of Prometheus in Batman v Superman, that he is very aware of Ares and stuff like that. So I think it ties in totally for this world. But a couple of things that I wanted to take a minute to address about the movie are a couple of the slower points that are very reflective of the characters. More specifically, there is a scene between very early in the movie between Steve and Diana when they're on a boat,
On a
and
boat.
they're both talking about. It basically gives you more insight into the psyche of these characters and where they're at in their lives and how they look at the world. And it's just one of those scenes. I think this movie was very brave to allow some time to breathe and not just focus on the action and the war and everything, and give these characters the opportunity to have a discussion with each other and have a little bit of some witty, not banter, but a little bit of banter, but have a legitimate longer discussion than we've seen in a lot of these movies. Because one of the things about DC movies is there's a little bit less back and forth dialogue, and there's a lot of monologuing. Is one thing I've noticed, and I think that that Wonder Woman allows a lot more breathing moments for the characters to just discuss things and talk about things, and also the scene where they are dancing is pretty great, just because it really brings those two characters together, and you see them let their guards down, and you see that they're each starting to see each other's worlds through their walk in each other's shoes for a bit and kind of see into their own heads. They're really good ponderous moments that you get with the characters. It makes you really care for them. Also, the squad that they have, the little ragtag group, I think was a great addition to the film. The one thing that I kind of wish that they did was the guy who was the sniper. He didn't really get. I was hoping he was going to get his moment to like have a great. We were going to get a great sniper scene, like Saving Private Ryan style, but unfortunately we never did. I thought they were kind of setting up for that, but unfortunately they didn't. But what I think they did great with those characters is they portrayed them as real relatable men, and they were just three guys that were thrown into this war based on circumstances. I mean, one was an actor, one was just kind of a man without a home, and the other one was more of a mercenary soldier. But anyways, there's just so much that this film did well, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, my final thoughts. Yeah, I would have done Ares a bit differently. I don't like the idea of taking away the agency from mankind. I would have written it a bit differently. I could go on that for ages, but I'm going to spare y'all the time there and just cut to the point and say that it was a great movie, great acting, solid action. CGI was a bit iffy. Some of those background characters, the squad, I think was rather Rogue One-ish in its development, but it was overall a great movie. There were moments of great inspiration too that I really enjoyed. The No Man's Land scene comes up to mind, and just the way Diana just, everybody was telling her, no, you can't, no, you can't, you can't, you can't, and she said, oh yes, I can. And
Like saying Lord of the Rings,
Yes, I can.
it's no man's land because nobody can cross it.
right, exactly.
She's not a man.
Exactly.
She crossed it.
She crossed it. That's right. There was a
Classic
symbolism
Greek
there.
caveat.
Yeah,
It's an iconic scene, and it will be.
I think so too. It is a great scene. I think it was shot very well. It was inspirational. It would be absolutely stupid for any one of us to do that, but that's kind of the point here. She can, we can't, and her leadership there, her gung ho-ness, even naivete, led the way there, and I really appreciated that scene and the village as well. The downtime they had in the village really paid off later on when we come back to see that it was the target of the gas attack. Just very, 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 very well done. I think the war aspect of Wonder Woman is perhaps the best aspect of Wonder Woman. And that's coming from someone who regarded the Themyscira scenes with great joy. It was everything Asgard should have been in Thor and wasn't. But I really did enjoy this movie overall. I could harp on it, but it doesn't really deserve it, so I'm not going to. I'm gonna leave it there.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will go. DJ, would you say you already kind of gave your final thoughts, or did you have any final thing, really, really quick?
Yeah, I like the way that they separated it was almost two movies in one. One was a kind of a Greek mythology movie, and the other was a straight up war movie, and it mashed them together. I think that was brilliant. Yeah, final thoughts.
Nice.
Beautiful movie, fantastic. Not
Very
much else I
nice.
can say.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just kind of go down the list. James, do you have any final thoughts you wanted to say?
Yeah. So I just want everyone to know I do love this movie. I think that it proves that you can have multiple tones within one universe and be consistent. And I think that the variety of heroes that DC and Marvel has, that all of these different comic book companies have, to me, you should demand that the universe vary in tone, because she is just completely different from Batman and Superman. So her movie should feel distinctly different. And I think what the movie did is it allowed it to exist in that universe, but be its own thing. This was not to set up Wonder Woman 2. This was not to set up Justice League. This movie was about Wonder Woman and why she is the way she is in Batman versus Superman, and why she's going to be the way she is going forward. But it's all about her. And I think, when we have movie after movie containing, some like post-credit scenes and even certain like full scenes within the movie that exist solely to advertise something else, I kind of like the fact that this felt very much a standalone, without feeling out of place. I think as a movie, it's very technically well made. It's got great pacing. It has, apart from my complaint about the finale, I think everything before that has great action. And Gal Gadot is just perfect for Wonder Woman. I don't think we could have had... Exactly. I don't think that it could have been better casting. She just embodies the naivety that she needed, or naivete, if we're saying it that way. And
naivety.
And
the nativity scenes at Christmas.
all of that. But I really think that what the best thing that this movie did is get me really, really excited for her character going forward, without the cost of that without that coming at the cost of this own movie. So overall, very well made movie.
Nice. Well, I'll go ahead and give my closing thoughts too. Just I think there are a lot of y'all brought up some good criticisms. But also, again, I think we all agree that it was a fantastic movie, and I appreciated. We mentioned the cast of secondary characters really quick. I really actually appreciated that we were given these archetypes and then kind of reversed it out, where instead of having it be like you see these characters that turn out to be an archetype, we are given these archetypes that are then given character. Like the Scotsman that went from being just your crazy guy to having the very real and very common struggle of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's absolutely what he was dealing with.
Yeah, I thought that was a great addition.
Yeah, to see that in the moment, it was just a fantastic scene, and just really like hit me. I don't know why it hit me like so hard as it did, but it really did. So there was like stuff like that. I thought little Ares moment for me was just seeing the armor just coming on was fantastic to me. Stuff like that. And just overall, fantastic, well done. I look forward to see where this brings us in the future, because like y'all said, it doesn't add to the universe, but it enhances so much about it. So I'm ready for the future and see where it takes us. Ryan, I believe you already gave your final thoughts. Kiefer, no.
Okay, everyone said pretty much the same thing, so I'm going to take a little bit different tack here and say that this movie contains an iconic scene that matches up very well for me with the other iconic scenes in DC movies. One, the ending of Suicide Squad. Everybody was waiting on it, and it finally happened. Man of Steel had what I think is one of the most fantastic scenes in all of comic book movies, which is Superman versus the World Engine. That's an inspiring scene that I've watched probably over 100 times just by itself. Then, of course, there's the warehouse scene and the Doomsday versus Superman death scene. So the No Man's Land scene in Wonder Woman, I think, is absolutely iconic, and it's worth watching the movie just to see that.
Oh, absolutely.
So again, like everyone said pretty much the same thing, so I won't repeat them here, but it's absolutely worth seeing 5 or 6 times in the theaters. Maybe if you just go twice, you'll enjoy it. But, the more you watch it, the more you'll appreciate the little things that Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot do so well.
Very nice. And I think one thing you had mentioned before, I mentioned kind of with the armor, an iconic villain entrance scene will be just the 2 seconds Ares carves the eye slots out of his helmet. Like, to me, that was just, as a villain entrance, like, the reality of, like, he is...
That was amazing, yeah.
That was so good. But, yeah, looks like that's going to wrap us up for the night. Any final things? Anything at all? Anybody else? Anybody?
Yeah, one real quick thing. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter and social media. I want to point out that
getting there.
Tay Zonde is now following me on Twitter, the Chocolate Rain guy. So I don't know if y'all knew that.
Yeah, boy.
If you're listening to this podcast and you don't follow me already, don't you be doing something that Tay Zonde isn't, or the opposite.
It's true. It's true. What Twitter handle is he following there?
At the Fitz Racket or G Gordon Liddy.
G Gordon Liddy. All right. That's fantastic. Fantastic. Kiefer did mention our social media. So I'll go ahead and run through that. We have a lot of ways you can watch, listen, read stuff we're doing. The primary, which is our website, Article Asylum, which you can go to at www.articleasylum.wordpress.com. We have regular articles coming out. Got all sorts of fun stuff, whether it's Trailer Thursdays or anything, all that stuff. Great. We also do have Twitter at Article Asylum and Instagram, YouTube, which our wonderful seducer Chris, not James, Chris, has actually been doing some videos on, doing a little video game stuff actually. So that's some fun. Check that out. Any other social media I missed? I don't think so. So yeah, check us out there. We got all sorts of stuff coming. We will have Wonder Woman written reviews coming, I'm sure. And I think Ryan's planning on doing something with that. So yeah, fantastic. And Facebook as well. I forgot the most prominent one. Facebook, we have regular updates. We'll ask some questions every once in a while, get some community feedback. So check all of it out. We'll be glad to have you. In the meantime, this has been Audio Asylum. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm pretty sure we all love you. So rock on and have a good night.
Woo.